Friends, what will happen if you are in the ocean with your boat, and suddenly the ocean's water disappears somewhere, and later you see the empty and desolate ground of the ocean? How much can this thing scare you? And after all, where has the water of the ocean gone that has disappeared? And will that water ever come back to this ocean again or not? Let's know the answers to all these questions from this story. You will really like this movie, which is a sci-fi adventure film released this year, named Survive. So let's learn about this story. The story begins, and we are shown a family that has come to the ocean to celebrate their son Ben's birthday. This was the Caribbean Sea. Here, everything was going perfectly normal. Ben's mom jumps into the ocean to swim, while Ben and his father were busy fishing. But suddenly, Ben's mom Julianne felt something in the ocean, as if something big was circling around her. When she looked around, everything seemed normal, but suddenly, something pulled her under the water. At the same time, the instruments on their boat began behaving unusually. Ben and Tom did not notice this as they were busy fishing. Meanwhile, drowning Julianne tried to save herself and also called out loudly to Tom, but no one noticed her. At this moment, Julianne felt that the ocean's water was moving backward, and at the same time, she herself was being dragged. Now, Tom noticed this and saw Julianne, and so Tom jumped into the water to save her. Meanwhile, Ben started the boat's engine to bring it closer to them. Now, Tom saved Julianne from drowning, and after this, Ben and Casey pulled both of them onto the boat, and in this way, Julianne's life was saved. Now, on the boat, Tom got angry at his daughter Casey. He said, "Where was your attention? You know, don't you, that someone has to keep an eye on whoever goes swimming? Then why did you break this rule? What would have happened if something had happened to your mother?" Now, Casey was feeling guilty about this too, but everyone moved on after she said sorry. Afterward, they celebrated Ben's birthday. At that moment, Casey got a call from her boyfriend, and she noticed that behind her boyfriend, a big storm was coming in the city. Seeing this, Casey became a bit worried because at this time, they were not in a safe place. She told this to her mom and dad, after which they started checking their boat for safety. While checking, they noticed that a lot of whales and sharks were circling their boat. Tom knew that whales and sharks only behave like this before the arrival of a big and terrible storm. They had already anticipated the coming storm, but before that, they had to deal with these sharks. At that moment, their boat was hit by a powerful jolt. To check this, Tom went into the water and saw that a huge dent had formed under the boat, likely caused by a big shark. After checking, when Tom came back, he was badly injured. Seeing this, Julianne stitched up his wounds. Here, Tom told his family that because of the dent caused by the shark, they could not move the boat forward. Now, their only option was to call someone for help, but they had no signals. The communication equipment on their boat was not picking up any signal. At this difficult time, Tom checked their food and drink supplies and found that they had water for only 4 days and nothing else. However, they felt some relief knowing that they were on a shipping route, and some passing ship might spot them. While they were discussing this, they heard a loud noise from outside. When they went out to see, a large meteorite was coming toward them. It could collide with their ship. To avoid it, Tom quickly started the boat's engine, but he knew that if he did this, the boat would get destroyed. And that's exactly what happened. The engine of their boat got ruined, and another meteorite began heading toward them. To save themselves, they had no other option, so they went to the lower part of the boat and put on life jackets. After this, they heard a loud sound, and all of them lost consciousness. When they regained consciousness, they found themselves alive. Although they had injuries, the strange thing was that a huge hole had appeared in their boat, but water was not entering through it. When the family came out of the boat, they were shocked to see the view. The area around their boat was covered with fish, and the boat was stuck in a rocky, mountainous area. It seemed as if they had arrived on another planet. The place had completely changed. Where there was water just last night, there were now high mountains and pits. Tom quickly took out his compass and checked the directions. He realized that something had gone wrong with the Earth. The poles of the Earth had changed. The North Pole had moved to where the South Pole was, and the South Pole had moved to where the North Pole was. Because of this, all the water of the ocean had moved to where people used to live. Now, the ocean had turned into land. After discovering this, the family was shocked. Tom explained another frightening fact to them. Everyone who had been on land would have died because of this shift. Casey became very scared after hearing this and locked herself in a cabin. Meanwhile, Julianne started gathering whatever food supplies were left. Tom released the remaining birthday balloons into the air, hoping someone would see them. After this, Tom tried to contact someone via radio. He wasn't expecting any response, but to his surprise someone did respond. It was a captain who had been in a submarine. The captain knew about the ocean shifting, as he had experienced the same while being underwater. The captain informed Tom that the Earth's poles would return to their original positions in about a week, which meant the ocean would return to its place. However, the waves at that time would be extremely dangerous. The captain advised Tom to find a high place where they could stay, as it would be their safest option. Hearing this, Julianne immediately told her children to start packing. Tom asked the captain if his children could take shelter in the submarine. The captain replied that he wished he could help, but his submarine was small, and one of his companions had already died inside. The submarine only had space for 2 people, so he could take one person but not both children. Tom pleaded with the captain to take both his children, promising to do anything in return. Moved by this request, the captain agreed. Tom then calculated the submarine's location and told his wife that they could reach there in 2 days, before the ocean water returned. This would save their children's lives. The next morning, the family prepared for their journey. But from a distance, Tom saw a strange man approaching with a dog. Tom noticed that the man was injured and decided to help him. He gave him water, but after drinking the water, the man attacked Tom instead of thanking him. Julianne saw this from afar. The man killed Tom using a knife he carried. Julianne couldn't save her husband, but she quickly locked her children inside the boat cabin to keep them safe. She also handed Casey a flare gun, telling her to use it only in extreme need. As they were talking, the man reached their boat, forcing Julianne to hide in the bathroom. She began stitching her wounds while the killer searched the boat. When he found food, he started eating hungrily, indicating that he hadn't eaten for days. After eating, the man looked for Julianne, but by the time he reached the source of the noise, she had escaped through the hole in the boat. However, his dog spotted her, forcing Julianne to kill the dog to avoid being caught. She hid under the boat, evading the man temporarily. When the man found his dead dog, he realized Julianne was outside the boat. He stepped down to search for her, but Julianne used the opportunity to climb back onto the boat. Julianne, using a broken piece of glass, managed to create a way back into the boat. But shortly after, she was caught again by the man. He grabbed her by her hair and began beating her severely, even torturing her. He started choking Julianne, but she somehow managed to fight back. Casey, who was watching all this from the cabin, remembered the flare gun her mother had given her. She used it at the perfect moment. Although the flare gun didn't harm the man much, it caused their boat to catch fire. Julianne quickly grabbed her children and decided to escape the burning boat. As they were leaving, the man attacked Julianne once again, but this time, she kicked him away, causing him to fall back. After getting outside, Casey and Ben saw their father's lifeless body and began crying. They couldn't believe what had happened to them. Ben blamed himself, saying, "If I hadn't released those colorful balloons into the air, this man wouldn't have seen them and come here." Meanwhile, Julianne clung to her husband's body, weeping uncontrollably. At that moment, she saw the killer coming out of their burning boat. Realizing that staying there was no longer safe, she grabbed her children and fled. Running for their lives, they eventually stopped behind a mountain to rest, thinking they might have lost the killer. Ben was still crying, and Casey tried to console him, offering him clean water to drink. But Ben refused to drink, blaming himself for their situation. While they were talking, Julianne noticed that the killer was still following them. Panicked, the three began running again, exhausted but unable to stop. Every time they looked back, the killer was still on their trail. Eventually, they reached a place where toxic water was present. Though crossing it was risky, Julianne instructed her children to go through it. While crossing, their condition worsened. Julianne realized that Ben was severely dehydrated. They had only a few drops of water left, which Julianne gave to Ben. But it wasn't enough to make a difference. Casey began losing hope, saying she didn't believe they could survive. She urged them to accept their fate, but Julianne scolded her, saying, "Be quiet and do as I say. We will move forward, and I promise to save you both." Encouraged by Julianne's determination, they resumed their journey. Eventually, they came across a crashed plane that had fallen into the ocean years ago. They took shelter inside the wreckage. Julianne looked at a family photo they had taken the night before, and everyone remembered Tom with heavy hearts. It was late at night, and they were exhausted. Casey and Ben fell asleep, but Julianne, unable to rest, stepped outside the plane. To her horror, she saw the killer was still following them in the darkness. Pretending to sleep, Julianne waited for him to get closer. When he approached, she launched a surprise attack. This time, Julianne fought with all her might, stabbing him repeatedly in anger. Finally, she killed the man, eliminating the threat once and for all. Relieved, Julianne fell into a peaceful sleep. The next morning, when Julianne woke up, she found the killer's body in a horrible state. This made her realize that even the dry ocean floor was extremely dangerous. However, they still needed to reach the submarine where the captain was waiting. As Julianne studied her map, Ben, thirsty and desperate, went ahead to drink water from a nearby pond. Despite Julianne's warnings that the water was toxic, Ben ignored her and drank it anyway. Julianne quickly pulled him out, but the damage was already done. Ben fell severely ill from the toxic water. Julianne and Casey decided to build a small shelter nearby for Ben to rest. As they tried to recover, Julianne began hearing strange noises from outside. When she stepped out to investigate, she saw a massive swarm of crabs moving toward them. The family immediately started running for safety. In the distance, they saw a large cargo ship with containers on it. Hoping to find refuge, they approached the containers and noticed that some survivors had locked themselves inside. When Julianne and her children pleaded for help, the survivors refused and locked the doors tighter. With the swarm of crabs approaching rapidly, Julianne and her children climbed onto one of the containers. While climbing, Julianne was bitten by a crab, but she managed to reach the top. Casey helped Julianne tie her wound with a scarf, but the crabs eventually broke into the container where the survivors were hiding. Chaos erupted inside as the crabs attacked the people. Despite their attempts to fight back with weapons, the sheer number of crabs overwhelmed them. The next morning, Julianne woke up and found that her children were missing. Terrified, she feared for their safety in such a dangerous environment. She began crying, but soon saw Casey and Ben returning. They had gone to search for food and weapons and came back with supplies. Julianne treated her crab bite, while Ben worked on the weapons they had gathered. Later, Julianne contacted the captain through the radio. The captain informed her that he had also been attacked by sea creatures and was severely injured. He explained that the ocean water was beginning to return, which was why the sea creatures were reappearing. However, Julianne and her family no longer had the map to guide them to the submarine, as it had been lost during their chaotic escape. The captain fired his flare gun into the sky to help them locate the submarine. Ben noticed the flare, and they started heading toward the location. But their journey became even more challenging as they encountered a toxic wasteland. Crossing it was extremely dangerous, but they had no other choice. As they moved forward, Casey began doubting Julianne's ability to save them and started arguing with her. Julianne scolded her and insisted, "We will move forward no matter what. I will save you both." Encouraged by her mother's determination, Casey reluctantly continued. However, their luck ran out as a landslide occurred. A large rock fell in front of Julianne, trapping her. Casey refused to leave without her mother, but Julianne made her promise to protect Ben and move ahead. Heartbroken, Casey and Ben continued toward the submarine. When they reached the submarine, they found no one there. Desperate, they started banging on the submarine's door. Suddenly, the captain appeared from behind, badly injured. He explained that the submarine had room for 3 people. Hearing this, Casey immediately turned back to look for her mother. Meanwhile, Julianne was surrounded by crabs again. She used her gun to fend them off, but soon ran out of bullets. Just as the crabs were about to attack her, Casey reached out her hand and helped Julianne escape. The family rushed toward the submarine, climbing aboard just as the swarm of crabs reached them. A massive tidal wave, nearly 100 feet high, approached them rapidly. It looked terrifying and unstoppable. The wave crashed into the submarine with tremendous force, causing everyone inside to lose consciousness. When Julianne woke up, she discovered that the submarine was no longer underwater. The tidal wave had carried it to a devastated city on land. The scene made it clear that humanity had been nearly wiped out. The destroyed city symbolized the collapse of civilization as they knew it. And with this final, heartbreaking moment, the story of the film ends. Friends, if you liked this video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. We'll meet again in another amazing video like this.